can't spell flush without flu.
I think there's a lot of potential for wastewater surveillance.
Colorado health officials are keeping tabs on your sewage to predict where viruses are spreading. A Colorado congressman threatens to defund Denver's infrastructure projects until the city changes its immigration policies. After 2 decades on the air, ESPN's Around the Horn is calling it quits and saying farewell to a Coloradan who helped define the show's run. And CSU teams up with a nonprofit to make sure no part of their bison herd goes to waste.
We're opening it up to the public to come and just scoop some poop.
It's the news with no BS. Well, maybe a little BS. Tonight on Next. Whatever all of us are flushing down the toilet is now coming out the other side helping scientists. Wastewater testing wasn't just a pandemic thing. Your sewage is still being used as a gauge for public health. Now flushing is helping track the flu. Our Evan Krugel found out why.
A hot, steamy shower is a daily occurrence for thousands of Coloradans. But most don't think twice about where that water ends up.
I think there's a lot of potential for wastewater surveillance, and we're really at the very beginning of trying to understand how to use this data.
Dr. Rachel Herlihy and the state's health department have been tracking COVID-19 levels in wastewater for more than 3 years. Now they're using the same technology to test for influenza and RSV.
Because wastewater data doesn't rely on an individual seeking health care for us to gather that information. So it's a nice augment to the other routine work that we're doing in public health.
Dr. Herlihy says water from showers, sinks, even sprinkler systems ends up in the sewer before being tested at local water treatment plants. 20 of those utilities are now testing the water for viruses before sending the information to the state. Data from the first flu season closely matches hospitalization data, but Dr. Herlihy says the wastewater testing is coming in faster.
The promise of wastewater surveillance is that it has the ability to start identifying that virus sooner, as soon as that person starts shedding it.
The state is now posting that data on an online dashboard where people can search specific watersheds to see COVID, flu, and RSV levels in their area. And while she understands some may find this to feel like Big Brother, the state isn't tracking who specifically is sick or where.
We are not doing work in Colorado at an individual building or school or hospital or households. This is really at a large community level.
Now, this testing only works for homes on sewer systems. So if you live in a rural area or if you have a septic tank, you obviously are not included in this. But the state estimates it is testing about half of the state's population right now. And Mark, they're looking into what additional viruses they could potentially add into this repertoire to test for in the future.
I remember when we started learning about this during the pandemic, it's just absolutely fascinating to me. Can they determine if your house, can they test down to specific houses to determine, are you sick, or is your neighbor sick? Like, how specific can it be?
That's one of the big limitations with this, because they're collecting such a large pool of samples by the time it actually reaches a wastewater treatment plant. It's hard to know exactly how many people in any given community are actually sick with that virus. That's one of the big limitations here, but they say they want folks to look at the overall trend of data in an area. So when you look at your specific watershed, look at the trend over time instead of specific numbers. That'll give you a better idea of whether there's large spread in your community or not.
And the trends are still super helpful. I remember, during the pandemic, they could determine whether, a specific dorm at CU, for example, had an elevated COVID rate and all those. Super interesting. Evan Krugel, thank you.
You bet.
A Republican congressman from Colorado Springs wants to defund infrastructure projects in Denver and other so-called sanctuary cities in an attempt to force more cooperation with federal immigration officers. Freshman Congressman Jeff Crank introduced his first bill today, which seeks to block the Department of Transportation from funding infrastructure projects in any cities that give ICE less than 2 days' notice before releasing undocumented immigrants from police custody. When announcing the bill today, Crank specifically named Denver as an example of a city that could lose funding under this bill. It comes just after Mayor Mike Johnston spent 6 hours testifying about Denver's policies before Congress yesterday. And Crank argued Denver didn't deserve federal funding in a virtual town hall just last night.
they don't deserve our federal funds. If they're not going to help us enforce the law, the federal law on immigration, why should they be entitled? They're not entitled to federal money if they're not going to help us, and nobody's asking them to go out and be immigration enforcement officers. We're just asking them to work with our federal officials.
Government spending data shows infrastructure projects in Denver received $118 million in federal transportation funds within the last year. Withholding that funding would have ripple effects for residents across the state. So just for example, in the last year, Denver has received federal funding for maintenance and construction at Denver International Airport and for a bus rapid transit system that will now service parts of Aurora when that's completed. President Donald Trump is once again backing off threats of steep tariffs against Mexico and Canada after some international pushback and a hit to the stock market. Today, he announced a pause on the 25% tariffs he announced just a couple of days ago. The White House says certain imports will be exempted from the new tariffs until April 2nd, as long as most of their production is done in North America. But some other products, like Canadian energy exports, like oil and gas, will still face a 10% tariff. That could have big impacts on Colorado and our gas prices here. Our top import by far is Canadian oil. Colorado's Democratic Treasurer Dave Young says even though the U.S. is backtracking on tariffs today, the continued threat of a trade war with Colorado's two largest import markets creates more chaos for the already unstable state budget.
The state is already facing a $1.2 billion shortfall, and this is uncertainty that actually adds to the crisis that we have in the budget right now. It's going to create uncertainty for businesses as to whether or not they want to even invest in our economies. They don't turn on a dime like President Trump's mind does every morning when he wakes up.
Again, Trump says he still plans to move forward with the steeper tariffs in early April, so we may be going through all of this again in just a couple of weeks. A good parent's instinct is to support their child through anything, but how far are some willing to go to do that? Try 7,000 miles. Jaleesa Irizarry introduces us to a family planning to abandon their reality for a little hope.
So in my hand, I have our contract that we have signed with Immigration New Zealand.
A pile of papers prove one thing. For Candace,
It is massive relief, yes.
nothing about the last few months have been impulsive. Intentions are only inked when a choice is made.
November 6th was when we made the decision. We spent most of the day in tears and panic. And what do we do?
It will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
President Trump's inauguration speech spelled out Candace's greatest fear for her 11-year-old transgender daughter.
It was very hard. It made the most sense for us to make the decision to leave the country. So we can use that.
Candace and her family have decided to move to New Zealand.
Let's see.
They're working with an immigration consultant and hope to give their daughter access to care and a better quality of life. But mixed with these papers is a problem. Trump signed an executive order that requires all new passports to align with a person's sex assigned at birth. Candace's daughter's passport gender does not align with her birth certificate, and it will expire while they're abroad and Trump is still in office. The State Department is offering people in Candace's daughter's position to apply for a new one with the sex listed at birth.
It is dead gendering, and that to her is devastating.
If you can wait on your renewal, we recommend doing so and holding on to your currently valid passport.
Carl Charles is an attorney with Lambda Legal. He says trans people should not try and apply for a new passport right now because it's unclear when folks would get those important documents back. A risk Candace won't take if it makes all this paperwork pointless.
It's more important to us now to be able to get that visa and to be able to escape than to try to deal with all the bureaucratic rigmarole with paperwork and process.
As Jaleesa Irizarry reporting, Candace and her family plan to leave this summer. She says their immigration consultant tells them a different gender on a passport and a birth certificate will not be a problem there.
We don't see it as a waste. We see it as actually a fairly valuable resource.
One animal's you-know-what is another man's treasure. A nonprofit is putting piles of waste to good use in gardens across the state. And a legendary sports journalist in Denver prepares to sign off after decades on the air. That's next. Each night, somebody writes in, usually on Twitter, of course, to accuse us of spreading total bull. Well, tonight they're right. The bull from CSU's Bison herd has been piling up for years, and this weekend it's being put to good use. A nonprofit in Lafayette is giving it away for free to tribes who use it for fertilizer, and to anyone who wants some. Just bring your own bag.
And we're excited to see how this stuff does.
It is all sorts of pasture and field grass that bison have eaten and pushed out the other side.
Buffalo manure. Yeah, it's the good stuff.
This is bison manure. I can't tell you the science of it. I just know it's really good for the soil and for growing things in. My name is Dave Ventimiglia. I'm the executive director of the Teepee Raisers. We're a nonprofit that works on Native American reservations.
I'm Matt McCollum. I'm the herd manager for the Bison Project at Colorado State University.
CSU, they're working with the original Yellowstone herd of bison. And so we've been bringing tribal youth down to the university to help tag and vaccinate those.
And we also, feed them hay, and they make a lot of poop.
For years, CSU has been pulling the poop out, just scraping it out and putting it in a pile. And the pile up there is easily 10 times the size of this.
We've got 7 years or so of manure built up, and on cold days you can see it actually steaming.
And so for me it was a natural, can we have some of this? They wanted to get rid of it, and so we've been trucking loads down here.
We're able to use the resource, and we're able to share it with people that can use it. And so it's a win-win for us, for sure.
A lot of this pile will go up to Pine Ridge to fertilize their gardens this spring. But we have extra here, and we don't see it as a waste. We see it as actually a fairly valuable resource. So that's why we're opening it up to the public to come and just scoop some poop.
We'll see what it does. Do good things, manure.
Just glad they haven't invented smell-o-vision yet. Teepee Raisers is holding their giveaway at their site in Lafayette on Sunday between 11 and 1. If you want to pick up some goods, let's call it, for your garden, Teepee Raisers ask that you bring your own truck or bag and come prepared to load it up yourself. Hard turn now to the weather now, Kathy Sabin. Let's just hope the wind is blowing in the right direction on Sunday in Lafayette.
I thought I smelled something different when I walked in the studio today, Mark.
Yeah, we were going to bring back samples, but we chose not to.
Thank you. I have free fertilizer at my house, too. If you ever need that for your garden, just let me know. The winds are blowing tonight ahead of a storm that will bring rain to Denver and continuing snow to the mountains. Temperatures have come down into the 40s after a day with a high at 52. These gusty winds will create areas of blowing snow. The storm that's crossing will bring 3 waves of snow, the next one getting set to ramp up now, and some of that moisture coming in the form of rain showers to Denver between now and about 9 o'clock. And we have winter storm warnings that remain in effect for 10 to 20 inches of snow by Saturday morning. So keep that in mind if your travel takes you into the mountains. For Denver, that rain will mix and change over to snow overnight. We'll have periodic snow showers and the possibility of some light accumulation during the drive time 24 hours from now. So we've called a weather impact alert for tomorrow simply because it could be snowing for the drive tomorrow night. Chilly high of 37 on Friday, sunshine and 52 Saturday, 60s close to 70 on Monday. And don't forget, daylight saving time begins this weekend.
May I make a recommendation? Something that's not from our team, but gives you a bird's eye view of life in rural Colorado. I want to point you to a fantastic report from Chase McCleary at Rocky Mountain PBS. He profiles Dr. Charles Francom, a physician and surgeon who's putting some major miles on his small plane and flying himself to work at a dozen hospitals in remote locations across Colorado and Kansas. It's a critical service for patients at small, rural, critical access hospitals, like they call them, that often can't afford full-time specialists.
My entry into flying and working was here in Springfield, Colorado, and living in Denver, and just needing an efficient way to get down here one day a month. And then that sprung into going to 12 other towns and going every day.
So important. It's a great read with tons of insight into the creativity it takes to access healthcare in some of Colorado's smallest communities. You can find the full article linked on our next social media pages or on the recommendation tab of 9news.com.
We have a Woody Paige drinking game, and every time you get muted, we do shots, and by 6 o'clock at night, we're all drunk.
Denver's Woody Paige has been a one-of-a-kind presence on ESPN for decades. Now he's preparing for the run to come to an end. That's next. I remember coming home from school growing up here in Colorado and immediately turning on ESPN every afternoon. I just wanted to make it home in time to watch Around the Horn. For the past 23 years, the show has been a staple for sports fans everywhere. The network announced this week the last episode will air in May. Spencer Soischer shows us how a sports columnist in Denver, Woody Paige, became Denver's national star.
Did you see that pass bounce off the top of a helmet?
Woody Paige made it to the finals of Thursday's edition of Around the Horn.
Yes!
He's bringing the hot takes and energy. Caffeine in hand, the longtime Denver sports columnist turned ESPN star is fired up today.
Well, I'm not going to be as impressive as Frank was reading off of the roster of the Boston Celtics for the last 50 years, but
the hotter the take, the higher the score. Each time a panelist wins, they get FaceTime. Woody ended up losing. No FaceTime for Woody today, but FaceTime was all about Woody.
As one of the younger panelists on the show, a lot of us grew up coming home from school and watching this particular program, and one of the people that we always saw was Woody Paige. And whether you
Thank you, Harry.
ESPN canceled Around the Horn this week. A 23-year run is ending for the afternoon show that featured debates from sports writers around the country. Woody currently does the show from another TV station in Denver.
I asked at one point, I said, who's going to watch the show? And they said, drunks and college kids. I started getting emails saying, you need to be muted less because we have a Woody Paige drinking game. And every time you get muted, we do shots. And by 6 o'clock at night, we're all drunk.
The show lasted long enough that people who watched it growing up are now on it.
Woody Paige, I would not be here without your influence, man. I appreciate you.
His trademark blackboards hanging behind him on each show made you look up to see what clever line he came up with. A funny dad joke in each segment.
When I die, my tombstone will be a blackboard. And on the blackboard, it will say, I told you I was sick.
Spoiler alert, his associate Natasha writes them.
That's my handwriting. I can't read it.
The show that made Woody famous around the country with young audiences ends in May.
I don't take myself seriously. I take the jobs I do seriously.
Woody represented Denver. Maybe it's better known as the show Woody Paige made famous.
We've been on the air now 23 years rather than 13 weeks. That's incredible to me. I mean, I think in television time, that's like dog ages.
Woody says his mom used to ask him frequently, did you win today? He genuinely wants to win this show every day. I don't think he liked losing today, even with them giving him a tribute during the other panelists' FaceTime.
Of all the shows that I've watched, I've never seen the behind the scenes. That was really cool. Spencer Soischer.
A little spot.
Exactly. We're back with your feedback next. Your feedback tonight. Bill says testing wastewater and posting results is a perfect example of government silliness and waste. Well, it does have to do with waste, but let's just dig in a little bit deeper into that. So wastewater testing helped us get through the pandemic, and now it's helping us get through this flu season, for example. It kind of started during the pandemic, this testing, and now it's helping us now. The people who know what they're talking about, these public health officials, say it can really help keep everybody safe. That's why they're doing it. So I say we support that if it keeps the rest of us healthy. Plus, it's super interesting to talk about. Kyle's back tomorrow. We'll see you next time.